Listening Fanfiction presents Order Up by Sweet Fictional Dreams, based on the manga and anime series Boku no Hero Academia or My Hero Academia, narrated for you by Sierra Feast. Ultra-Exquisite was a famously popular restaurant located on the high end of the city. It wasn't expensive or fancy enough to require formal wear, but more often than not, dresses and suits filled the rooms. The weekdays were relatively even-paced for sales, as the customers were mostly regulars or dates of all kinds. It was the weekends that made the restaurant party central. Ultra-Exquisite was the place to be if anyone wanted a wonderful night of drinks, good food, and excellent service. Every employee was dressed to impress, from the servers, bussers, and hosts to the employees customers never even saw, like the cooks. Getting a job there wasn't as easy as any regular restaurant, as the owner had very high standards. The servers and hosts were either college students or stellar full-time workers. Almost every cook had either years of experience under their belt or came highly recommended. Bussers were mostly college or high school students that needed night shift jobs in order to focus on their studies. Katsuki fell into the last category when he'd first applied, a high school student that wanted to start saving up for college and get some work experience under his belt. He'd absolutely refused to work somewhere like a damn coffee shop or some shitty fast food place. His mother recommended Ultra-Exquisite as a joke about him being a server, knowing full well he couldn't fake being polite to customers for however long they decided to dine in. It instead gave him the idea to apply for a position that didn't really require him to speak to customers. He applied to be a busser. The hiring process took a few days, which consisted of first an initial interview. An inquiry to his high school principal came next, overviewing his grades, attendance, and punishment record, all of which were perfect, so he'd gotten his last interview. Once his onboarding was done that night, he was given a uniform and a training day. Most of it was where everything went in the dish room, when to change out the trash bins around the restaurant, how often to clean the restrooms, and closing out. There were certain manners bussers were expected to have as well as the other workers, like the fact that customers always had the right of way. It was rude to ever cut off a customer. Bussers were to never set bus tubs on the tables or try to bus a table when the customers were still there. Pre-bussing was left to the servers, but otherwise it was important to wait until the guests left. The job was perfect for him, and even sweeter was that they were allowed to wear earbuds as long as they were wireless. So Katsuki went about his job with an eagerness to be the best busser they ever had, all while jamming out to his music. His mood was at an all-time high as he worked hard at being a straight-A student while keeping an eye out for colleges, then going in at night to clean the hell out of everything. Time flew by, and without even realizing it, he'd been working there for a solid 4 months when the incident happened. It was a weeknight, and a cook had called out due to a car crash. Nothing dangerous, but enough to take them out of commission. Weeknights didn't have as many cooks or servers scheduled, as it wasn't called for. There was normally only 3 cooks, and it was perfect. Everything would have been fine if the other cook hadn't done a no-call, no-show. A senior in college was on his own on the line and trying desperately to keep up with the tickets. Of course, the world would decide to shit on the poor guy, as it was an unusually busy Wednesday night. The manager was on the line with him, but the manager wasn't normally cooking and unable to keep up. Katsuki was doing his round of dish reloads with clean plates for the cooks when he saw the sheer amount of tickets hanging from the clip rack. He'd stared as the two of them worked as fast as they could and put the dishes down. "Hey," he pulled out his earbud. "I know how to cook. Give me some of the smaller shit. I'll back you up." The manager appeared extremely skeptical and hesitant, but even they couldn't lie about how overwhelmed the two of them were. So, with an expression of defeat and concern, they'd thrown him an apron. Side orders, appetizers, and prep was tentatively handed to him. It was easy coming from a family that, if it weren't for the fashion industry, absolutely would have been famous cooks. Katsuki had a very good understanding of the dishes, and in no time they were working in tandem. He felt a little bad that he essentially left the other busser to pick up the work of 2, but the guy reassured him it was completely fine. Time absolutely flew by as orders kept pouring in, and the few servers they had ran around in a hurry. By the time everything finally died down, it was closing time anyway. Katsuki stepped off the line basking in sweat and a sense of accomplishment. When they were doing their closing rounds, the manager asked to see him in the office. "Would you like to do some training on the line?" they'd asked seriously. "You're a godsend and actually really good. With some of the training videos and some practice, you might make a decent cook." The word decent rattled in his head like a rock. Decent! He'd be the best fucking cook they had! As long as I get the pay. Cooks were paid significantly more than any employee in the store minus the managers. The manager saw the fire in Katsuki's eyes and smirked. "Let's see how you do first." The next few nights were split between being a busser, then doing cook training. It was almost hilarious how condescending some of the training videos were. If the bulk of them weren't about the dishes they served or how they were cooked, Katsuki would have raged. They started him out slow, as the third man on the line. After a week, he proved his worth tenfold and progressed to the second man. He actually got to know the servers as a result of seeing them from the other side of the window that was the server gallery. While they didn't speak specifically to him, as it was a rule that a server only addressed the wheelman, which was the first man on the line in charge of the other cooks, as well as reading out ticket orders and selling the tickets, he saw their name tags and how they interacted with the other servers. Katsuki's first paycheck had made him choke in surprise. It was over 1,000 with some change. He'd been so tempted to treat himself, but put it away into savings. College. He was saving up so he wouldn't be a starving college student. He did, however, treat his parents to lunch with his hard-earned money. They'd been reluctant and almost refused to let him pay. Katsuki insisted, wanting to treat his parents for once. His mother had smiled, and Katsuki made a vow to do it again. Eventually, as time went by, Katsuki began to switch between being the second man to the wheelman. The previous wheelman appreciated the laxum responsibility as he was about to graduate. When college senior finally put in his 2 weeks, they decided to hire another cook. Katsuki had taken the head cook position for the weeknights as new cooks filled the line to replace the graduates. When the summer rolled around, Katsuki opted to become full-time, and that happened to include weekends. The utter hell that came with summer weekends was a very interesting time. He was introduced to the expo that worked on the weekends. Learned that apparently tickets and orders were so immense while the dining floor itself was so busy that servers would never have the time to pull their own food, let alone dress the dishes as they were supposed to be presented. Another interesting detail about weekends was that servers never talked to the wheelman. They talked to the expo, who then relayed the information to the wheelman, ensuring that servers didn't overwhelm or distract the wheelman while orders were being called out, food being cooked, or tickets being read. He honestly preferred that rule because servers tended to give him a whole goddamn story as to why they needed something remade or something added onto a ticket. There were 2 expos that often alternated so the other could serve, ensuring they both got the chance to earn weekend tips. Tamaki Amijiki, who was a rather quiet junior in college, but never missed a single detail. His expo style was very orderly, as he liked to group together food he knew belonged to certain tickets, so he wouldn't have to constantly glance at the ticket then search the window for the dish. Whenever he had to relay any misentered orders, mistakes, or modifications, he was short and to the point. Katsuki liked having Tamaki in the window. His boyfriend was the complete opposite, personality and expo-wise. Mirio Togata was a buff college junior that the servers adored. He was extremely friendly, lively, and a good conversationalist. While the servers liked Tamaki because he had a shy softness to him, they liked Mirio because he was a friend to all. He didn't group together the plates like Tamaki did, but instead pulled everything down when Katsuki eventually sold him the tickets. He personally liked to have the window emptied all at once. Mirio talked a lot and often rambled at Katsuki, even though he knew full well Katsuki wasn't paying attention. On the weekends, the expo would call for runners when a ticket was ready to leave the server gallery. Because everyone was so hectically busy, each server was expected to chip in and run food whenever they could. It was a great system to make sure all tables got the same amount of attention, as well as keeping the servers busy. A network of communication the servers had, letting each other know when another server's food was getting ran. Katsuki admired how the servers worked like a well-oiled machine. Sometimes, though, every single server would be so insanely busy that no one could run food. After perhaps 3 calls for a runner, the expos would take it upon themselves to run the food. Of course, it wasn't a requirement, but it was from an understanding that the servers had tables up the ass. Katsuki was always amused to see a server come into the galley with wild eyes, only for the expo to say they'd run their food and see the utter gratitude and relief as the server turned tail to go check on the table. A year had passed in the blink of an eye. In that time, servers moved on and got replaced with other students. Katsuki got new cooks on the line. A red-headed team named Kirishima became his second man and was a hard worker. He was just as quick, though he fumbled here and there, but was nevertheless extremely reliable. Katsuki liked him a lot and even started to hang out outside of work as friends. They often passed the time joking with one another and being stupid on the line. When business was booming, though, they were ready to go. After him came Denki, a spaz-brained dude with way too much damn energy. He was extremely quick on the line, though, and occasionally hilarious. Katsuki was pretty sure he had undiagnosed ADHD, but he was alright. Then came the new round of employees for the front of the house. Mina, Momo, Hagakare, Tsuyu, and Todoroki, the darlings of the floor. Mina was Kirishima's athletic crass girlfriend who Katsuki actually liked as she was funny as fuck. Jiro, Tokoyami, and Sero were the restaurant goths and buttheads that were perfectly functional even though they were always high. Jiro had an excellent taste in music that could rival Katsuki's, was witty as hell, and Momo's girlfriend. Uraraka and Ida were the perfect host team that had seating on lock. Uraraka was really kind and great with customers, making her a perfect host. Ida, Uraraka's boyfriend, was extremely quick when scouting the floor and strict on following the floor chart. Of course, there were plenty of other cooks for the weekend and a few more servers, but they really didn't matter to Katsuki. Work for a while was really fun. Everyone got along and it didn't really faze them when they, of course, got rude customers. With a work crew that fun, how could anything bring them down? When Mirio and Tamaki put in their 2 weeks as their graduation came around, it all changed. They had important events and other job lineups that pulled them away from the restaurant. In preparation, the restaurant hired 2 new expos to fill their positions and get trained before the 2 left. Trained by the 2 original expos to seamlessly take over. At least that's how it was supposed to happen. The first one was slow as crap. They took too long to organize the tickets in correct time order, too long to locate the plates for a ticket, too long pulling the food, and too damn long dressing the dishes! Katsuki got more and more aggravated as his window was completely filled with dishes and he had nowhere to put more. He'd started to snap at the expo to hurry the fuck up or simply ask what the dishes were if they were confused. Reasonably, it would take a moment to recognize the dishes, but at the rate the new expo was going, it was ridiculous! When the inevitable happened, a plate fell off the window, bounced off the counter, and shattered on the floor with the food. It had been the last straw. Katsuki started yelling. The manager came in irritated at Katsuki and frustrated with the expo. They said Katsuki shouldn't be yelling, and the expo should have asked for help if they were overwhelmed. So the manager stayed in the window to help the new expo, who eyed Katsuki warily after that. He honestly did feel bad when the rush was over. The next day, the other expo was way worse. Katsuki at first was reassured when the expo would grab the tickets in a timely manner, organize them quickly, and started pulling food. That all came to a screeching halt when servers came back into the galley with plates. The expo was sending out the wrong plates. It turns out they hadn't been organizing the tickets by time, but rather by what they saw in the window. Katsuki always let the expo know when he was selling a ticket with a few items still in the works. Apparently, they completely ignored him when he'd thrown a ticket saying a certain item was still being worked on and pull a similar item from a different ticket for the one missing it. Which meant they were completely disregarding the ticket times and which ones got put in first, which was how the cooks made the food by. Katsuki snapped at them to put the tickets in the right fucking order and to not let him catch them doing that crap again. Of course they didn't listen. He'd thrown a few tickets, then sent the last one that was a relatively small with just 2 dishes, saying the steak was on the flip. Katsuki kept his eye peeled out watching the expo. His blood started to boil when he saw the expo skip past the longer tickets to the shortest one, the one that should be pulled last, as it was put in way after the others. They then pulled a medium-rare steak with mashed potatoes and green beans from the window for that small ticket, even though it called for a well-done steak with mashed potatoes and broccoli. Even though Katsuki fucking told them the steak for that tiny fucking order wasn't done. Katsuki absolutely lost it. While the dining room couldn't hear Katsuki, given the noise of the kitchen, the server galley, then the hall leading out to the dining room between them, the servers that sometimes chilled in the hall certainly did. A few began to peep into the server galley to watch Katsuki ripping in the expo, screaming till he was red and had a migraine building. The manager came in quickly, having already had to talk to multiple customers, pretty upset. They told the expo to go home and took over. They weren't as upset as Katsuki, but they knew he had a reason to be upset. Everyone giggled about Katsuki's tantrum when they were closing. Servers had side work to do at the end of their shift to make sure the restaurant closed down efficiently, and each of them had to roll a bucket of silverware. When Kirishima, Denki, and he were done cleaning the kitchen, they'd often join the servers in one of the dining rooms as they all finished out their night. Kirishima always helped Mina roll her silverware bucket, and Denki would roll in general to help the load. Katsuki didn't usually help, as he was too tired. They joked and laughed about his explosion, saying they normally feel bad, but the expo was a dick and didn't care that the customers were yelling at the servers. Katsuki felt a little better for having his friends see him like that. He cared about them and how the customers treated them. He especially cared about how the food he and his cooks worked on was presented. Come the next weekend, it turned out that the dick of an expo was fired. The one that was too slow took the reins for a moment, and Katsuki was ready to rip his hair out. He'd been told the expo got plenty of practice from morning shift. He'd been told the expo would be better. It was a goddamn lie. They were slower than ever, and no amount of remarks from Katsuki would make them hurry up. When it got to the point that the food in the window was dying under the heating lamp from being up there too long, he felt his temper rising again. The food he and his cooks worked on was being wasted. It came to a boiling point when he saw the expo pull the then nasty-ass old food and serve it. His servers came right back in with those plates. Katsuki walked off the line and went straight to the manager, telling them that they'd better get the fucking expo out of there or he'd lose his shit again. That expo quit not long after that, beginning a never-ending cycle that eventually became a source of amusement and stress for the Ultra-Exquisite crew. It was a cycle that expanded well on into their college years. Katsuki had gotten into his dream college on a large scholarship. It was in the same city and relatively close to home. He'd never admit that he cried opening the letter his parents handed to him when he got home, reading out that he'd been accepted. He'd sound like a baby as his mother hugged him and told him how damn fucking proud she was of him. Then he'd about wailed when his dad took him to the garage to show him the car they'd bought him. A bright red Camaro with black stripes down the middle. He had been vibrating with excitement when he went into work driving his beautiful car. Kirishima practically tackled him upon walking in, saying he'd gotten accepted as well. The rest of the crew all gushed about the colleges nearby that they would be going to before the rush happened. The restaurant kept hiring new expos, having them only for a few weeks or months before they got fired or they quit, having whatever manager was on shift cover as an expo for a while before they decided to try again with hiring one. Sometimes they lasted a bit, but eventually they'd be unable to keep up or start fucking up too much. Then Katsuki would lay into them harsher and harsher each time. Eventually, the managers and owners stopped getting mad at Katsuki or even the servers when they occasionally laid into the expo as well, because they were the longest crew working there that the restaurant had. Definitely the most reliable. When the summer after freshman year rolled around, they finally hired a decent expo named Shinso. His hair was a deep purple that almost passed for black, which Katsuki supposed was why they allowed it, and extremely pale bluish-gray eyes that looked almost purple. The guy looked tired as fuck, and upon getting to know him more, Katsuki learned he was an insomniac. Everyone in the restaurant was relieved when Shinso did really well on his first day. Then on the second day, after having experienced what the workflow was like, he was even better. Shinzo was adopted into the restaurant family relatively quick, and everyone teased Dinky about his obvious crush. For a while, everything was finally going smoothly again, like when Tamaki and Mirio worked there. Katsuki still talked to them frequently and followed them on social media. It was great to know they were doing well, getting married in the next year or two and flourishing in their careers. Mirio had sent him fuzzy black ties to hang off his rearview mirror as a joke when he heard Katsuki got a car for graduation. Joke was on him though. Katsuki loved them. Everything was going great again until sophomore year rolled around when the restaurant started to once again try and hire a second expo. Shinzo didn't mind being the only expo, but admitted it would be kinda nice to get out on the floor. The managers took that as him begging them for relief. Katsuki and the crew were thrown back into the pits of shitty expo hell. It was once again a cycle of Katsuki trying his hardest to give them a chance, or to be patient, only to have it all explode. There were expos that would sit at the counter and call for a runner forever, too fucking lazy to even think about running the food themselves. Katsuki would yell at them to help the servers since they were obviously swarmed with tables, only to have them refused. Then there were the expos that were shitty but demanded a bigger tip out from the servers. At the end of every shift, the servers would tip out the expo for pulling all their food, dressing it, and having it ran. Based on how well the service was that day and the quality of the food would determine how much the servers were able to tip the expos. If the expo was on point, like Shinzo, they'd easily walk away with over $100 on top of the hourly pay. Katsuki and the servers were livid when an expo would be utter crap and hound the servers for money, or when they'd bitch that they weren't being tipped fairly even though their crap expoing caused the servers to not get tipped as much. Those types were fired pretty quickly. There was a memorable time when an expo called Denki a goddamn useless airhead, to which Ida and Todoroki had to step in between Katsuki and Kirishima for beating the living shit out of him. There were plenty of expos that tried to yell back at Katsuki, insisting they were doing fine and he was just a jackass. Others would break down crying and quit on the spot. It became a running joke in the restaurant to even the workers Katsuki didn't know the names of that no expo was worthy of Katsuki. There was just those he tolerated. His friends joked he was just so pent up because he had absolutely no love life and was a virgin. An embarrassing fact he'd let slip at an after-work party while high out of his mind. He argued that between working towards his chemical engineering major, being the head cook, working out, and spending time with the losers making fun of him and his family, that he had no time for a nagging lover that would complain for attention. So it continued into the end of sophomore year, when summer rolled around once again, and the restaurant would surely need that second solid expo. Katsuki had just walked in with Kirishima and Denki from a smoke break when he first met the new expo. It was a tiny thing with curly dark hair and a lean body tailing the manager around. When the manager caught sight of the three of them, they perked up, turning the newbie's attention towards them. The boy was about 2 feet shorter than Katsuki and Kirishima, but they'd always been tall guys. The new guy was only a little shorter than Denki. What Katsuki noticed first was how insanely green and big his eyes were, like fucking Bambi big, complete with long eyelashes, rounded cheeks, a button nose, and small chin. The next was that he had a lot of freckles all over him. He had a small, shy smile with cute Cupid's bow lips, a red tint to his cheeks. New guy looked like a Disney princess, and Katsuki immediately knew he'd be another crying expo that quit on the spot. A shame, he was kinda nice to look at. "Guys, this is the trainee expo, Izuku Midoriya," the manager said with an unusual gushing tone to their voice. "Midoriya, this is our head cook Bakugo, our second man Kirishima, and third man Kaminari." Midoriya's smile widened, though it was still shy. "Hello! I hope we'll get along and work well together." Katsuki almost wanted to laugh in his face. Oh, it hurt this boy's feelings so much. It was almost sad, like knowing a train was about to wreck horribly without being able to do anything about it. From the pitying air from the other two, he knew they were thinking the same thing. They, though, were much nicer than Katsuki. "Welcome to the crew!" Kirishima smiled back vibrantly. Always good to see a new face. Katsuki snorted. They saw a new face every fucking other month. He saw Midoriya's eyes flicker over to him lightning fast, and a flash of something go through those eyes before looking back to Kirishima. Katsuki felt a touch of curiosity, wondering what that had been about. Then he gave a wave with too many waves. Hey, Midoriya! Hope you like it here. We're all pretty cool, and it's a nice place to work. Almost all of us are college students, so totally the same crowd. Midoriya let out a light giggle. Well, I've heard good things. With that, the manager led poor unknowing Midoriya away to the office, presumably to watch training videos. Kirishima sighed as they headed towards the line to prep for the rush that night. He seems like such a sweet guy. Denki laughed. Man, Katsuki is gonna crush him. I almost feel bad. The night went on as usual, with Shinso in the window, listening to his music and chatting with servers when he had a chance. He almost forgot about the new guy until the manager popped up in the server gallery with him in tow. Shinso was introduced to Midoriya, and the manager gave a brief explanation about the role of an expo. Then he took Midoriya back out, perhaps to see the other servers. After a while, the manager came back in with the guy and asked if he would like to observe Shinso. Midoriya thought about it before shyly asking, Actually, can I watch the rest of the training videos? Katsuki rolled his eyes. The little fuck probably didn't feel up to actually working at the moment. The manager nodded, though, and directed him back to the office. Katsuki once again forgot about the new guy as the rest of the night carried out. After the kitchen was cleaned, the three of them made their way out to the front to sit with the servers. Shinso was already there, helping roll some silverware, his breast pocket bulging from his tip-outs. They all plopped themselves down, the other two rolling, while Katsuki scrolled through his phone. The topic of the new expo came up briefly, the others mentioning how cute Midoriya seemed. It didn't last, though, as they'd long learned not to get attached to expos. When they were relaying interesting customer stories, the new guy popped into the room they were in. He nervously fiddled with his fingers. Sorry, the manager is on an important call. Would you like any help? The girls gushed over him, all but pulling him down into a seat. Mina briefly showed him how to properly roll before the guy caught on quickly. Uraraka leaned over to talk. So, Midoriya, have you worked in a restaurant before? His shy smile returned, as well as a quick blush. Sort of. I worked at a cat cafe in high school. We served food, but it was more bistro type. I was mostly a barista and took care of the kiddies. Again, the girls awed over him saying, Kiddies. Momo pitched in. You're a college student too, right? What college do you go to? Katsuki felt a small surprise when Izuku listed off the same college he and Kirishima went to. Kirishima was surprised too. Oh really? Me and Katsuki go there too! What are you majoring in? His eyes flickered between Katsuki and Kirishima before focusing on his silverware again. Oh, computer hardware engineering. The group eyed at him as Katsuki's eyebrow rose. That explained why Katsuki had never seen the guy. While the campus was huge and had thousands of students, Midoriya had something about him that stood out. Whether it was the eyes, the freckles, or the hair that he realized was actually a dark green. Katsuki was sure if he'd run into him at some point, he would have recognized him. Chemical engineering was on a completely different side of campus than computer hardware engineering. Each of them took turns listing off their majors and colleges. Katsuki continued to scroll through his phone, though he was simultaneously watching the newbie interact with the crew. Kirishima was right in that Midoriya was a very sweet boy with good manners and a timid aura to him. He never once cut anyone off or spoke over them, always briefly looking to the speaker to ensure he was listening. Sharing details about himself without oversharing, Shinso was currently giving advice. I'd say one of the first hurdles is recognizing the dishes. A lot of them look pretty similar. Once you get used to it, though, it'll get easier. There was a light tension to the air as they all surely thought of Katsuki's token tantrums. Midoriya hummed, long having completed a neat pyramid of rolled silverware. That makes sense. The videos were very thorough. Lots of questions and all. If I hadn't taken any notes, I'm sure I wouldn't have done well on the test. Shinso frowned minutely. The test? You mean the quizzes? Midoriya shook his head, a light crease between his eyebrows. Oh no, those were easy. The big test at the very end, to see what you learned. The purple-haired expo stared for a moment, suddenly appearing very awake. Those videos took me 2 days to finish. Katsuki himself knew what he was talking about. As a cook, Katsuki had to watch the food videos that the servers and expo had to as well. They weren't necessarily long, but they were jam-packed with information that was impossible to memorize on the first watch. The quizzes at the end of each module were also ridiculously strict about the questions being absolutely perfect. From what the dish sizes were called to just how many ounces of sauce were supposed to go on certain dishes. Before any of them could say anything, the manager appeared in the dining room looking slightly apologetic. Sorry about that, Midoriya. Do you need me to unlock a quiz for you? If a trainee failed the quiz twice, it would lock any reattempts that only unlocked with a manager's numbers, something that happened often. Midoriya smiled. No, I'm good. I'm actually finished. The manager nodded, looking to their watch. Done for the night? I understand those videos are a lot of information to process. It's completely fine if you need a break. You can pick it up again tomorrow night. Midoriya sheepishly wringed his hands, as if he was nervous he'd done something wrong. Oh, no, I'm finished with everything. I passed the test, so I left it on that screen. It was the manager's turn to stare and blink. Oh, really? My, that was the quickest I've ever seen anyone go through that. I hope you didn't just blaze through everything and not pay attention. He appeared horrified. I would never! I took plenty of notes, promise! I have a good feeling about you, Midoriya. The manager beamed. Come on back, I'll print out your certificate and get you a uniform. Obediently, Midoriya stood, though he quickly distributed handfuls of rolled silverware to the servers so each of them got a fair amount. It was really nice chatting with you guys. With that, he disappeared around the corner with the manager. The group was quiet for a moment before Shinzo spoke up. I either have a terrible memory, or he has a photographic memory. Katsuki fizzed. By notes, he probably means he wrote down all the questions and answers. Denki shrugged. You gotta admit that's a good idea. He rolled his eyes. Not if it means he doesn't know what a single damn dish looks like. Akakane pushed her lips. Well, he is working on a computer engineering degree. Maybe he's just really smart. Todoroki shook his head. The other expos were mostly college students as well. They were smart too, but it doesn't mean they were good workers. Ida looked disapprovingly at them. I think it would be wise to not go into this with preconceived notions based on the performance of past employees. Not to mention, it's rather unfair. Katsuki groaned and got out of his chair, stretching his arms above his head. Glasses is doing the thesaurus impression. That's my cue to leave. They all said tired goodbyes as Katsuki clocked out, telling them, I'll see you all whenever. He went through the usual grind of school and studying on Monday, enjoying his scheduled night off. Then he went in a few nights after classes to allow the other cooks their days off. His final day off, on Friday, was filled half with a reluctant dread as he thought about how hectic the weekend was going to be, already anticipating the stress of a shitty expo and trying to get through the shift without losing his mind. Come Saturday, he pulled into his usual parking spot, prepared to brace the night face on, a fresh pack of cigarettes laid out and ready on his dash. When he walked in and went to the line to start prepping, he was taken aback, seeing Midoriya already on the other side of the window. When he glanced over to see what he was doing, he saw that the boy was ensuring all his dressings were full, and well as any item essential to the expo counter was there. Katsuki, not wanting to get his hopes up, Midoriya donned their black button-up uniform with his name tag placed perfectly on his right breast pocket, the half-apron the front of the house wore already on. When the back door let out its little chime that it was opened, Midoriya looked up as Kirishima, Denki, and the other cooks started to pile in. He smiled brightly. Evening, Bakugo! It's my first night as the expo! Well, duh, he thought. I can see that. Instead of saying it out loud, Katsuki just gave him a nod. Slowly, the other night shifters started to come in, preparing and ensuring everything was stocked for the shift. It was routine to make sure morning shifts didn't leave them empty-handed. There were always a few things they'd glossed over. As Katsuki started organizing the line, he could hear the servers commenting on how everything was already stocked. Midoriya piped up when most of the servers were in the galley. I saw some things were empty, so I went ahead and stocked them for you guys. The servers gushed over him. Many of them came around to the kitchen, telling Katsuki to go easy on Midoriya since he was very sweet. Shinso went up to Midoriya to see if he had any questions and asked if he was ready for his first night. Midoriya didn't have anything to ask and commented on how he hoped he did okay on his first night. It started out as a slow crawl, as it usually did, before the night crowd started to trickle in. Katsuki had a ticket come up and worked through it quickly. Midoriya patiently waited, the servers around starting to grab drinks for the table. Katsuki set the food up in the window, looked over the ticket to make sure everything was there before taking the ticket down off the clip rack and sending it to the window. Midoriya reached out for the ticket, briefly looking it over before turning his attention to the dishes. He was quick to start taking stuff down, not glancing at the ticket again as he grabbed the plates. Katsuki pushed a bowl closer to him as he reached for it. "This is part of that ticket." He gently set it onto the counter, busily dressing the food that needed to be dressed. "I know it's the chicken pad thai. Thank you, though." Katsuki still didn't want to get his hopes up. It was promising that he recognized the food, but it didn't mean he'd be a good expo. After he was done dressing it, which he'd done swiftly and put everything back where it had originally been, he turned to look around the galley. There was a soft smile on his face as he found who he was looking for. "Cyril, this is you! Can you run it, or do you want a runner?" Cyril, who had been talking idly with Todoroki while grabbing drinks, paused. He raised an eyebrow, a little impressed, as he set the cups down. "Nah, I got it, bro. Everything there?" Midoriya pointed at each dish as Sarah walked over, labeling off each one without even looking at the ticket. "Did I miss anything?" Cyril smirked, piling the plates onto his arms. "No, man, you got it. Did you call for a follow?" Midoriya, to everyone's surprise, loaded the rest of the plates on his arms. "I got you." Cyril cast a quick glance to Katsuki, catching his eyes as he was already washing. There was a quirk to his brow as he headed out, the little freckled newbie trotting behind. A few more tickets came in, and Midoriya came back as Katsuki started calling out the order on the line. More tickets printed, and Katsuki braced himself. The rush was beginning. Midoriya eyed the tickets before messing with his phone for a second. Katsuki could vaguely hear music playing on Midoriya's side. Kirishima hit play to the cook's speaker, and the beginning chorus of a rock song set the rush into full swing. Katsuki felt himself shift into gear as he called out orders and delegated dishes to certain cooks. He saw his first significantly modified ticket. "Walk it in, salmon surfs up. Cut the lemon glaze, no herb mix, butter dressing on the side, veggie man, sauteed asparagus." When everything was finally plated and thrown up into the window, Katsuki grabbed the first 5 tickets. He did a brief scan through them all and his window before crushing the tickets and throwing them. They landed somewhere on the edge, just a few inches from Midoriya. He'd already started calling out the next round of dishes while keeping an eye on the newbie. Midoriya quickly grabbed the tickets, straightening them before shifting them around. Then immediately he set them down a few feet apart from each other on the counter. He proceeded to use both hands to grab multiple dishes from the window, setting them down presumably where each ticket was laid out. In the span of a few seconds, the window was cleared and Midoriya was flitting around dressing the dishes. When he was satisfied, he stepped back. "Runner! 5 times!" A few servers flooded in, checking the tickets for what tables they went to. When a follow was needed and no one else could do it, Midoriya was more than happy to run out quickly. He always came back with a small smile, feeling good that he was of help. No matter how many tickets Katsuki sold in the very brief time he was gone, Midoriya caught up in no time. When Katsuki would tell him a ticket was waiting on an item, Midoriya would nod and circle it with a highlighter before telling whoever ran it, keeping the ticket up in the window so he didn't lose track of it. As the time started to fly by, Katsuki felt himself losing the tension that came with the anticipation of the expo messing up so much. That tension was brought back when Tokoyami came back with the first server error of the night. Katsuki saw him speak to Midoriya lowly, pointing at his ticket. There was an intense look on Midoriya's eyes before he nodded, turning to Katsuki. "Do you have ticket 23 on the board yet?" he asked sweetly, leaning in close to hear Katsuki's answer. He was short enough that the window was level with his chin, and he appeared smaller as he leaned over the counter space in front of him to peer into the kitchen. Katsuki stopped briefly, using his favorite knife to stop the tickets from waving in the heat of the stovetops. He shook his head. "Not yet." "Okay, if you could tell me when you have it, that'd be great," Midoriya chirped before turning back to Tokoyami. "I'll let him know when they're working on it." The token goth appeared wary and skeptical, but was too busy to really stop. So he sighed and gave a curt nod before heading back out. Katsuki didn't see Midoriya write anything down or even ask again about ticket 23 as he pulled food and sent it out. Not long after, Katsuki pulled the next line of tickets from the printer, setting 23 amongst them. All right, newbie, tickets up. He spoke loudly to be heard over the noise of the line. What's the deal? Without looking up from dressing, he spoke up. Server error! Turn the T-bone to a ribeye medium rare. Sub out the green beans for sauteed mushrooms. Katsuki looked at the ticket to see Tokoyami had accidentally ran in a medium T-bone with sauteed green beans. He wasn't want to mess up much, but it would happen to the best of servers when it was extremely busy. He must have rung in the dish from another table or mixed up his notes. All right, Katsuki said, turning back to the grill. The orders continued to flow in and out of the kitchen and server gallery. Tokoyami came when Midoriya started calling for runners, and there was a twinge of appreciation in his dark eyes when his order was correct. Katsuki relaxed again. Later into the night, as the rush was reaching its typical peak before eventual die-down, Mina came bursting into the server gallery. Midoriya, I'm so sorry! I completely forgot to put in this order! He blinked before placing a soothing hand on her shoulder as she ran her hands through her hair in stress. Hey, it's okay. Did you just ring it in? She nodded frantically. Yeah, it's not that big. I just forgot. I'm sorry. A table wanted something and then another one wanted refills. He smiled before asking what the ticket number was. When she told him, he turned to Katsuki. Bakugo, can I please get ticket 61 on the fly? Katsuki grumbled because he fucking hated making shit on the fly, but he wasn't heartless. He pulled the ticket ahead of the others. On the flip right now. Mina thanked him over and over, as well as apologized repeatedly before running back out. When Katsuki sold the ticket, Midoriya lunged for it, pulling the order lightning fast. He dressed it with the confidence and speed of someone extremely familiar with the dishes before loading his arms up and running out. Katsuki blinked, speechless. Instead of calling for a runner like most expos would have done, he dropped everything to make sure the forgotten order was priority. Ikusuke Hiroshima and Denki too were baffled, all of them glancing at each other. Katsuki grabbed the finished tickets out of pure habit, checking them and selling them. Mina rushed in, eyes searching wildly for her order. Kirishima leaned forward. Mina, bring Midoriya ran your food. Her eyes widened, her pink lips dropping in surprise before she turned. Midoriya was back at the galley with a smile. Hey, Mina, your table was very understanding and they're fine. She blinked. Understanding? Midoriya resumed his post, grabbing up the sold tickets and pulling. Yep, I told them you were checking on another table and that you'd be right back around. I apologized for the wait and asked if everything was to their liking. They said everything looked delicious and you can take your time. They understand you're busy. The servers that were in the galley at the moment turned slightly, gaping at the curly-haired newbie as he dressed the dishes. Midoriya looked around, spotting Jiro. Jiro, this is you. Can you run? She fumbled, eyes flickering between the cups in her hands to her food. Crap, they've been waiting on these drinks for a hot second. Midoriya set the tickets down. Runner, 3 times. Tell me what the drinks are and I'll get them. Jiro smiled, handing him her server book before grabbing her food. Mina eventually snapped out of her daze and grabbed food for one of the tickets. I'm ready, Midoriya. He studied the server book once before filling the glasses. Thank you, I'll run the rest in a second. Once all the drinks were set on one of the small drink trays, he quickly flitted over to 2 of the remaining tickets. Shinzo came in, putting his server book into his apron pocket. I can roll one, Midoriya. Sweet! He cheered. I'll run the other. Shinzo loaded his arms, making sure Midoriya had a steady grip on his own. You good? The bubbly one nodded, his curls bouncing. Yup, let's roll! They both disappeared out the galley, and Kirishima laughed. Damn, he's pretty good! Adorable, too, Denki added. He's such a sweetheart. I feel like I'll get tired of beaties just looking at him, Kirishima added. After a bit, the night finally died down until the restaurant was cleared out and everyone started to close out. Katsuki and his crew started to clean the kitchen when Midoriya finished stocking and cleaning the expo counter. Once he was done, he looked over to the servers doing their side work. Would anyone like any help? Katsuki saw the servers gush over him, telling him expos didn't have to help with side work. The expo side work was technically only cleaning up the expo counter and stocking. Midoriya anxiously wiggled his fingers together, insisting he could help and that he would mind. Katsuki had never seen the servers so reluctant to accept help, so stubbornly pushed on them. The galley slowly emptied as the servers went to the back room to start rolling their silverware and do their checkouts. When the cook crew was finally done, they dragged themselves to join the servers in rolling their silverware. Katsuki saw that Midoriya was seated between Obarbaka and Mina, dutifully rolling silverware. Expos didn't have to roll silverware buckets, as they didn't take silverware for customers. Most expos loved that and would take off as soon as they got their tip outs. Kirishima plopped down across from his girlfriend, smiling brightly at Midoriya. Dude, you were pretty damn solid today! He blushed brightly, eyes shining and crinkling a napkin. I was? Mina gawked, mouth dropped open in disbelief. Heck yes! With your first day, you did amazing! Shinzo pitched in. Honestly, I figured you'd mess up pretty bad at least once. Most of the mistakes I saw you make, you got yourself pretty quickly. Not to mention you helped run the food a lot, Hagakure added. That helped us so much. Midoriya seemed confused. Why would I not help run the food? That would be so mean. They all stared at the impossibly genuine boy before them who couldn't possibly be a college student that's lived life long enough to know people are generally self-serving assholes. Denki reached out, throwing himself across the table and clasping Midoriya's hands. Never leave! Huh? Midoriya squeaked in surprise. Everyone began to agree Midoriya was now never allowed to leave. They died down and those bright green eyes tentatively found Katsuki's. He held the boy's gaze before rolling his eyes. You're alright for a newbie. Just don't get fucking comfortable and slack off. He brightened, all but lighting up the room. Thank you, Bakugo. Katsuki averted his gaze. No one but the managers call me Bakugo. Call me Katsuki. Midoriya flushed a brighter red than before. Well, then you guys can call me Izuku. Speaking of, Sue stopped rolling her silverware to grab her change bag. A cute little zip-up froggy. Time to tip out Izuku. Izuku blinked before gasping, Oh my goodness! I completely forgot about that! I would have totally clocked out and left! The others were once again speechless, a running theme that Izuku caused in them, it seemed. Sarah frowned. You forgot that we're supposed to tip you out? It's how expos really make their money, bro! He appeared embarrassed. Well, I was mostly worried about doing a good job today. If I'd done bad, I wouldn't have blamed you for not tipping me out. How different he was from most expos, who practically demanded their money as soon as they were done cleaning the expo counter. The only expos Katsuki knew that weren't really like that had been Tamaki, Mirio, and Shinso. They'd politely wait until all the servers were together after side work was done and rolling the buckets, telling them that they could take their time and tip them out whenever the server was ready, giving them time to actually see how much they'd made out on the floor that day. They all took turns passing Izuku his tip-outs, to which he took with a blush and thanks. Then he pulled out his wallet, to which Katsuki gaped at. You like All Might? Izuku smiled vibrantly, turning his wallet over to give him a better look, all while jittering with barely contained glee. I love All Might! I used to watch the show over and over as a kid. I practically burned the VHS tapes watching the original movie so much. Katsuki couldn't help but feel a giddiness rising in his chest. All Might had been his childhood, even back when the show hadn't been so popular. The badass superhero didn't blow up until nearly a decade later when everyone jumped on the All Might bandwagon, which was still holding strong, if not even stronger. Katsuki always thought it was cool All Might was finally getting the recognition he deserved, but that they weren't the kids that grew up completely dazzled and entranced seeing him on the big-ass TVs that used to be. Didn't feel the anticipation and glory of waiting Saturday morning to see what All Might would do next. The curly-haired boy with sparkling green eyes and freckles on his skin like the herpes of art supplies got thrown on him had a Bronze Age All Might wallet. The newbie fans barely even knew about All Might's Bronze Age. Katsuki stared at the boy holding the wallet like it was treasure, eyes glittering with the excitement of meeting another All Might fan. Holy crap, he thought dazedly in his head. He's really fucking cute. Yeah, he croaked before trying to discreetly clear his throat. I still have the original debut All Might action figure in its original casing. Izuku's eyes got wider, his smile bigger.
He was vibrating in his seat, looking ready to spontaneously combust. Cool! I have that one too! I also have one of the 100 all-night manufacturing mistakes, where his bangs are facing the wrong way! Katsuki jumped forward, slapping his palms on the table. His own eyes were wild, a manic grin on his face. Shut the fuck up! No way! Izuku fumbled to take his phone out, which had a case of the chest piece of Golden Age All Might. With trembling fingers, he tapped away before turning his phone for Katsuki to see. It was an Instagram profile image with a stunning, well-taken picture feature the manufacturer era All Might. He had his arms up in his signature flexing pose with a smile on his face. However, the iconic bangs that were flipped up were inverted, where the smaller parts of the bangs were supposed to be on the outside were on the inside. An ultra-rare figure that only made 100 figures before someone caught the mistake. It was now worth $10,000. Katsuki could feel the awe and stars in his eyes as he looked at Izuku, and he didn't give a fuck what his shitty friends slash coworkers said. Before him was one of the luckiest, coolest, cutest people on the face of the fucking earth. They talked some more about All Might, completely ignoring the others around them as everyone started to clock out and said their see you tomorrows. Izuku eventually stopped mid-rant when a text message pinged from his phone. He gasped. Oh no! Sorry, it's my mom! I was supposed to tell her how the night went! It's late! Katsuki stood, pushing in his chair. Yeah, I should get up too, or my old hag will assume I'm dead in a ditch somewhere. Izuku giggled, pushing in his chair and following Katsuki to a terminal to clock out. Do you live with your mom too? My parents practically insisted, Katsuki growled, saying it'd been a smart thing since my scholarship didn't really include dorm living since I lived close by. They told me agreeing to get an apartment would be dumb, and I could live at home rent-free as long as I did my part. Izuku smiled kindly. Same! I have a scholarship as well. I also didn't really feel up to living in the dorms. I'm really close to my mom. We've been through a lot together, and if I had some sort of excuse to stay with her a bit longer, well... A mama's boy. Oh, fucking adorable. Katsuki smirked. Bet your dad feels a little left out, huh? For the first time that night, Izuku's face dropped and he looked away. Not shyly, like he tended to, or embarrassed. He was sad. Oh, my dad isn't in the picture. Katsuki felt like punching himself. Sorry for your loss. He waved his hands frantically. I spied. No, he's not dead. Or at least I don't think he is. He, took off when I was 4. Damn, that is shitty. He couldn't imagine his dad just up and leaving, deciding screw you to him and his mom. Despite how much crap he gave his dad, he loved him a lot. Well, fuck him then. There was a moment when Katsuki cursed his brash attitude and inability to deal with delicate situations before Izuku's shocked but loud laughter filled the parking lot as they went outside. It didn't sound like bells or a fucking choir like romance novels always said, because that shit didn't actually happen. Izuku's laughter was a borderline cackle, loud and shaking his small frame as he threw his head back. The way it scrunched up his eyes and his hand flew to his chest to brace himself had Katsuki chuckling along. Even though Katsuki's typical parking space was one of the first employee parking spots right out the back door, he found himself following Izuku to his car. He talked a little more, asking if there were any pointers or critiques Katsuki had after his first day. There wasn't anything, actually. He just warned Izuku not to get too cocky and overconfident that he would eventually screw up. Also, I know you're not going to be 100% perfect, Katsuki grumbled. I'll admit I have a bit of a reputation. Mostly because the expos will be stubborn fucking assholes that never wanted to admit they were wrong or yell back at me. Izuku giggled. Oh, I heard. You might not know this, but Mirio is my cousin. Katsuki blinked. Then blinked again. Then one more time for good measure. Laughing, Izuku unlocked his car, which was a little red sedan. There were anime stickers and cute knickknacks inside, with an All Might plushie hanging from the rearview mirror. He smirked. When I told Mirio I was thinking about working somewhere closer to home, he recommended here. He put in the good word with the owner. Katsuki stared. Some things started to click in his head. One of the managers had gushed over Zuko because he was obviously an angel and came recommended by one of the best employees they'd ever had. Oh, Izuku gave a slightly mischievous smirk. He also told me about a hot-headed cook that was good at his job, but had a habit of screaming at expos. Once you get past his prickly attitude, though, I'd realize he was actually pretty cool. It was finally Katsuki's turn to flush. His brain was glitching out, working at a fraction of half speed. Damn, sounds like an ass. Point him out when you meet him. Izuku snorted, but there was a tender look in his eyes. No, he seems pretty nice. They stared at each other for a moment, with Katsuki sure that he had fallen head over heels in love in the parking lot of Vulcan Ultra-Exquisite with the green-eyed angel of an expo leaning against his anime and all-might infested sedan. A ping from Izuku's phone broke their little bubble, and he jolted. Shoot! I should really get home! Katsuki didn't want to leave the parking lot. Yeah, me too. Izuku hopped into his car, starting it up and smiling with the door still open. See you tomorrow! He gave an awkward little wave, backtracking to his own car, still facing Izuku. See ya! The door closed and the boy backed out, rounding the parking lot to the exit before heading onto the dead highway. Katsuki sat in his car, and not a moment later his phone vibrated with a message. He dug his phone out to see it was the Snapchat from Mirio. When he opened it, he saw it was a picture. He clicked on it to see a picture of Mirio and Tamaki at what appeared to be a cafe with cats in the background. In the picture, leaning over their little bistro table and throwing peace signs with a cute smile, was Izuku. He had a white button-up on with his name tag on the right, a warm brown half-apron on his waist with a cat emblem. Mirio then sent a message with a smiley face. He's adorable, isn't he? Katsuki quickly opened his chat with Tamaki. Your boyfriend sucks, and I'm never talking to him again. Tamaki replied a second later. I would believe that if you hadn't said the exact same thing perhaps 1,000 times before. Mirio messaged. I love Izuku like a little brother, cats. Be nice to him. He stared at the message for a moment. The thing he'd always liked about Mirio was that while he was a very nice person, he never bullshitted his intentions. Always upfront with how he felt and what he was thinking. Mirio really was a good guy, so seeing him a little worried that Katsuki would let his temper get the best of him hurt a little. Sighing, he replied, Please tell me he's single. There was the typing notification from him. Then it went away. Then it came back, and then went away again. Katsuki frowned and jumped when the Snapchat video call rang. He answered, The fuck do you want? Mirio was seated in the living room of his apartment, Tamaki on the couch next to him, typing away on his laptop. The blonde's mouth was slightly agape. For a moment, he looked speechless. Katsuki fucking up? Do you have a crush on my baby brother? He flushed red. He's your cousin, stupid, not your brother. Mirio completely ignored him. You! Who has never even remotely been romantically interested in anybody ever? Who, as far as I know, still has his V-card? Katsuki flushed harder. So? So what? Does every guy have to be constantly thinking about getting laid? Nah, that's not the point. Mirio smiled wide. You... Damn, Izuku is just special. I've never met a single person that hasn't not been at least a little in love with him. He pouted. You never answered the question. The booming laughter from Mirio that crackled the mic a little almost made him hang up. Izuku's never dated in his life. That might be because he's oblivious that people love him. Because let me tell you, it's bad. Albeit, Katsuki dreaded. He had a girl tell him that you're unlike anyone I've ever met. You're kind and sweet and loving. If I had a boyfriend, I'd want him to be just like you. And she was blushing and everything. There was a twinge of jealousy in his chest. Yeah. Mirio looked at him with barely concealed laughter. His dumbass says, That's so nice of you. I hope you find him. Groaning, Katsuki slumped down in his seat, hope dying in his lungs. So Izuku was smart as fuck academy-wise, but dumb as fuck too. Rubbing his face, he tried to hide his grin from the camera. Why was that so endearingly adorable? Mirio's cackle meant he'd seen it anyway. You've already got it, man. I'm actually rooting for you, man. I know you're gonna do, Kat, so honestly, I totally approve. Whatever, Katsuki mumbled, though Muriel's praise always meant a lot. How do I let that idiot know I fucking like him? Muriel thought for a moment. Honestly, just tell him. You gotta be straight up with Izuku, no smoke and mirrors. Katsuki jolted upright. I can't just fucking tell him. That's embarrassing as shit. The other blonde sighed, rolling his eyes. Then do what you do best, Cats. Let your actions speak for you. Just maybe a little clearer than usual. He could hear a vibration, and Muriel's eyes flickered towards the top of the screen. A practically evil grin spread across his face. Speaking of the devil, you better not say anything, Katsuki yelled. Muriel smirked. Catch you later, Cats. With that, he hung up on Katsuki. He drove home with his heart in his chest and his lungs in his ass. When his mom was waiting for him at the entryway with her arms crossed and scowl on her face, he had an idea. She sneered. You're late as fuck. What, can't text your folks to let them know you're gonna do something? Gotta make us wait for you? He ignored her, humbling himself in a way he never thought he'd had to. Taking a deep breath, he blurted out all at once. How did you get that to notice you liked him? She blinked, dropping her arms in shock. Huh? Inhaling through his nose, he studied himself. How did you get Dad to notice you liked him? His mother stood there, mouth popped open with a look of pure shock in her eyes. Katsuki shifted his weight between feet, his hands picking at his pants. No doubt his face was completely red as he tried to not look her in the eyes too much. A wild scream erupted from his mother, making him jump a foot into the air. She ran through the house. Masamu! Katsuki's got a crush! Like a coward, he ran to his room before his mother could come back. No, the fuck I don't! The next night at work, Katsuki pulled into his parking spot and took a moment to steel his nerves. Mention you didn't get his number last night, and it'd be cool to talk about all night or some crap. Katsuki walked into the restaurant, trying to casually search for Izuku. He found the boy clocking in, turning when he saw Katsuki. Hello, Katsuki! Ready for work? Oh no. What was he supposed to ask? Number! Hey, give me your fucking number. Fuck! Izuku tilted his head to the side, a confused pout to his lips. Okay? Katsuki floundered. So, we're gonna talk and stuff, if you want. A blinding smile replaced the pout. Sure! He fucking nailed it. Katsuki was the best at everything. When Izuku plugged in his information into Katsuki's phone, he took it back like it was gold. Upon looking at the contact card, though, he paused. Why the fuck is your name spelled like Deku? The boy gasped, eyes wide and eyebrows slightly narrowed, as if he was questioning Katsuki's audacity. It is not! Katsuki smirked. It is! Don't get mad, Deku. It's fine that you lied about your real name. Izuku pouted grumpily, and it was so cute. You're such a bully! I take it back. You're not nice. Throwing his head back, he laughed, probably way too hard, but damn, he liked Izuku. When he recovered, he leaned forward, almost looming over Izuku. Aw, if you want, you can give me a nickname. The boy blushed, eyes blinking a few times. What? A rush went through Katsuki, feeling like adrenaline and being high. If you're my little Deku, you can give me your own nickname. Izuku's face burned a dark red, biting his lip and shoulders hunching forward a little. His eyes flickered downward before up again, and Katsuki wanted to kiss him so bad. Looking up at him through those Disney princess eyelashes like that wasn't fair. Kachan! He pulled back. What? A smug expression replaced the bashful one. If my name is goofy sounding, then yours is cutesy. Kachan! Like fuck, you're gonna call me fucking Kachan. Izuku let out a cackle that could rival a wit before sprinting towards the server galley. Kachan! 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 Even though he disappeared where we could see him, Katsuki called out, What are you, 5, Deku? He heard a slightly faint, Kachan! Chuckling, he shook his head before turning to go to the cook line and froze in his tracks. Hiroshima and Denki stood their mouths gaping with wild eyes. He grit his teeth. The fuck you looking at? Holy shit! Denki gasped out. Hiroshima sprinted at him full speed, jumping him before he could dodge. Bro! You left Victoria! That's so meanly! Here's Katsuki growled and tried to pry him off. Keep it down! Get the fuck off me! Hiroshima ignored him. Are you gonna ask him out? He relented. Hirošima's grip was like the jaws of a shark. We'll try. Gotta see if he likes me too. Denki snorted. You two were like inches from making out in front of us. You didn't even notice us come in. He likes you, dude. Katsuki sighed. I'll work on it. What's the point, you bro? Hiroshima fist bumped, finally letting Katsuki go. Get your man, kids! Easier said than fucking done. Izuku Midoriya, affectionately known to Katsuki as his Deku, was easily the densest motherfucker to walk the face of the earth. He'd been working at Ultra-Exquisite for 6 months, and in that time, Katsuki's flirting attempts went completely over his head. At the point he was at, the crew was making fun of how blatantly obvious Katsuki was being. When Izuku said he was going to step away from the counter for a second to restock, Katsuki would ask what he needed and practically sprint to grab it, abandoning the line so Izuku wouldn't have to walk to the storage room. Of course, Katsuki was always able to catch up in the blink of an eye. He knew Kirishima and Denki were fine on their own for a minute or two. Izuku's flushed face and glittering eyes were always worth passing by servers who laughed at him running around for Izuku. Not to mention the sweet little, "Thank you, Kachan." If Izuku came back from running food to a table with a set expression because the table was being mean to him, Katsuki would always ask what table it was, ready to go out onto the floor and beat somebody. Izuku never divulged what table it was, always saying, "It's fine, Kachan. I know they didn't really mean it. They're just hungry." Katsuki never failed to reply with something like, "They're just fucking jealous. You're so damn cute." The servers would roll their eyes at him and gag, but Izuku's giggle and blush meant more to him than their dumbasses. Or when Izuku started to sit next to him when rolling silverware, and Katsuki took to helping Izuku roll silverware. Katsuki never let Izuku distribute it anymore either. He'd grab a bucket and write, "Dekus." Katsuki wanted to rip his hair out at how much Izuku seemed to be receptive to his flirtations and advances, but never actually reciprocating. He gladly took Katsuki's attentive, soaked it up even. Katsuki just didn't know if that meant Izuku liked him back or what. With many of the servers starting on internships and getting swamped with studies, a lot of them were requesting fewer hours. Because of that, the restaurant took to hiring more servers to give everyone the time they needed, as well as keeping the restaurant properly staffed. A few older adults came to work, as well as a few other college and high school students. Many of them were too scared to talk to Katsuki directly, so they bypassed through Midoriya. Of course, nearly every single one of the new workers adored Izuku, except for one. A surly and very fake middle-aged man who was sweet as a peach to the customers. Sweet to the servers when being watched by said customers, but once he was out of their sight, the truth came out. He never ran anyone's food unless it was his own, never offered to help other servers, or plainly refused to help. Whenever Izuku would kindly ask if he was free to run food, he'd turn and snap, "Doesn't look like I'm free." Katsuki nearly broke his jaw, grinding his teeth so hard. Especially when Izuku would look ashamed and mumbled a soft, "Sorry." Hiroshima and Denki had to stop him from going into the server galley to beat the fucker up. Whenever the servers were rolling their buckets, he'd come into the room and dominate the conversation, saying all the wonderful compliments he'd gotten from customers showed how hard of a worker he was, how you kids don't know how to really work the floor. The guy already had a ton of complaints from everyone, but the owner made the final decision on firing an employee. Unfortunately, the owner was on a vacation, and all the managers could do was log and keep track of every complaint for when they got back. Hiroshima and Denki were reassuring him that the guy would be fired soon, to not do something stupid and get himself fired right along with it. Despite how lax the managers and owner were with Katsuki, he would never be glossed over for the zero tolerance they had for fighting amongst employees. Unless it was absolutely self-defense without a questionable doubt, both parties were to be immediately terminated. So Katsuki bit his tongue, held his fists, and waited. Until it happened. On a particularly rough day where the go-to orders were spewing out the walls and the customers were all carrots on crack, he and his line went outside to smoke. Katsuki didn't particularly like getting high at work, but they were finally closed and they deserved it. He, Kirishima, Denki, and Sero were sitting on the curb passing a joint when Izuku stumbled out. Katsuki's first instinct was to hide the joint, but because he'd been inhaling as Izuku came out, he choked and coughed. Izuku, sniffling, put his worries about getting caught to an immediate stop. He rubbed his eyes and stared at the blunt. Can I get a hit? Instantly, Katsuki held what was left out to him. Kill it. What's the matter? Izuku took it, taking a heavy inhale and letting the internal burn relax his shoulders with little controlled coughs. He started forward, and the glare Katsuki threw Sero's way needed no words as the tall fucker immediately vacated the curb next to him. Izuku plopped it down to Katsuki, taking another hit. He leaned against him, and Katsuki couldn't even enjoy his soft head resting on his shoulder. He wanted to know who was responsible for making his Deku cry. It's nothing, he mumbled. Kirishima frowned. No, Izuku, it's obviously not nothing. You can tell us by your bruise. Denki nodded. Yeah, man, you're part of this little family. Izuku sniffled, staring at the blunt in his hand. Am I a good expo? They all jolted in surprise. Sero snorted hard. Dude, that's like the dumbest question ever. You're great. Katsuki wrapped an arm around Izuku's shoulders, feeling grave and definitely high as he squeezed him close. You're the babe. Why do you ask? Izuku heaved a heavy sigh. Just Robert. Everyone was tipping me out, and when I looked at him, he got all mad. Said he didn't make anything today because his food came out like shit, and then he's not paying his shitty expo. Katsuki jumped to his feet, blood boiling. He said what? The boys were quick to jump to their feet, sensing a storm coming. Kirishima lightly gripped his arm. Hey dude, don't do something you'll regret. Denki tried to look convincing. You're just like, tell the manager. He'll get fired for sure eventually. Katsuki jerked out of Kirishima's grasp, the storm already rolling up to the shore. Too late to stop. Screw waiting! We've been waiting! I'm gonna teach that fucking asshole a goddamn lesson! With that, he turned heels, stomping up to the back door and throwing it open so hard it slapped against the wall with a hard crash. He could hear Izuku following after him, calling for Kachan. The others were close behind him as Katsuki barged into the room the servers were in. To his surprise, Shinso was already facing off with Robert, who had his arms crossed and a glare on his face. You're full of shit, Shinso yelled. That in of itself was startling, as Shinso had never once raised his voice. He was such a chill dude. Izuku doesn't make mistakes like that. Katsuki charged forward like a bull, kicking Robert's chair out so the middle-aged fucker faced him. The dude had to throw his arms out to stop the chair from toppling over. Katsuki got in his face. You've been nothing but the pain in the ass since you got here. I've never seen a more hated employee than you. I was gonna fucking wait till the owner came back to fire you, but you went and made Izuku cry. Everyone's eyes flickered back to Izuku, whose eyes were red. A newfound anger filled the room upon seeing that the demon of an employee made their angel cry. Robert stopped, standing up to square up to Katsuki. So fucking what? You little kids are just spoiled brats. You wouldn't know real work if it hit you across the face. You want me to pay the little fag for sitting in the window to flirt with you? The room grew deathly silent. At this point, everyone was standing. Robert was one dumb fucker, not realizing he was utterly surrounded. Not a single one of them were on his side. Katsuki took one deep breath before he threw his head forward. The resounding crack that echoed throughout the room was like music to his ears as Robert fell back with a cry. His hand pulled away from his face to reveal a bloody and definitely broken nose. You fucking bitch! You broke my fucking nose! Katsuki rolled his shoulders back. Did I? Did anyone see me do it? Robert stupidly looked between the college students in the room. Rebecca shrugged. I didn't even know Katsuki came inside. Peter nodded. Last I knew of his whereabouts, he was outside grabbing an item from his vehicle. Zero smirked. Yeah, I actually saw him come outside on my smoke break. He was out there for a while, Todoroki tacked on. Shinso hummed low in his throat. Yeah, he went outside before our dear Robert wiped out on the floor because he refuses to wear non-slip shoes. It was the truth that Robert refused to wear non-slips. His excuse when he told to by the managers was that there were no comfortable non-slips and he had knee problems, so they couldn't force him to wear them. Katsuki let out a feral smirk as he crouched on the balls of his feet, his arms rested on his knees as he looked down on Robert. You fell. Isn't that right, Robert? The cowardly bugger didn't even answer, staring at Katsuki like an idiot. Katsuki held out his hand. Give me your server back. He stared. Now! Katsuki roared. The man flinched before fumbling to grab his small black server bag. Katsuki snatched it and looked it over. On the front was a white silhouette of a woman in a provocative position. He fizzed before opening the bag and counting the money. Lying fucker had made over $200 in tips. Katsuki pulled out and counted 100 before tossing the bag back at him. He held on to the money as he leaned closer. Here's what you're going to do. You're gonna tell the manager you quit and never fucking come back. Because if you do, I'm gonna fucking kill you. Every single one of these guys will vouch for my innocence. No one moved to say anything to the contrary. Robert slowly got to his feet, shakily wiping his bloody nose before shuffling out. Katsuki and everyone started to follow him, and the sheer terror in the guy's eyes was glorious. They followed him all the way to the manager's office, who was typing away at the computer. Robert stuttered out, catching their attention. I quit. I'm leaving. The manager turned, then saw everyone crowded behind the menace they'd been complaining about. After a beat of staring between them and Robert's bloody face, they shrugged. Okay. Well, that went any hope that anyone would take Robert's side. So the man turned tail and ran out the building. Katsuki laughed and turned with the money in hand, ready to hand it to Izuku, only to find he wasn't in the crowd. Frowning, Katsuki backtracked to the room they'd all been in. Izuku was putting everyone's buckets in a neat stack when he saw Katsuki. Is he gone? Izuku asked quietly. Yeah, he's sure as fuck not coming back. Katsuki reassured him. He walked closer. Are you okay? Izuku nodded quietly before tears started to spill down his cheeks. I'm fine. Katsuki's lungs froze over. Crap. I didn't scare you, did I? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. No, it's not that. Izuku interrupted, wiping his eyes. Just what he said about me. Katsuki frowned. That F word? Izuku nodded. I've never been called that. It hurt a lot. Katsuki wished he'd bashed the fucker's face in. Well, he's never coming back. Nobody here cares if you're gay or straight or bi or pan or whatever the fuck else there is. Pan! Izuku mumbled, still not looking at him. Katsuki was silent as Izuku clocked out and as he walked him to his car like usual. When Izuku stopped at his door, Katsuki couldn't take it. Can you tell me what else is bothering you? Katsuki pleaded because he didn't like Izuku being so quiet, so obviously bothered by something. The boy fidgeted with his hands, swaying a little with his high that had more than likely been put on the back burner. It doesn't bother you what he said about me flirting with you? Katsuki stared, and he wanted to scream in frustration. Scream and scream and scream, as well as run in circles because Izuku had been flirting back with him. He tried so hard to articulate what he should say, how to answer the boy he wanted to kiss so much. But he was still very high and also riding down an adrenaline rush, so of course Katsuki answered in a very Katsuki way. I've been loving you since the day I fucking met you, dumbass. Izuku's eyes finally snapped up to his mouth gaping. Katsuki stared at him. Can I kiss you now? A shy little nod was all Katsuki needed as he lunged forward, hands raising. One carded through Izuku's hair like he'd wanted to do so badly, while the other held his jaw. There was no doubt he should have been gentler and maybe made it more romantic for their first kiss, but Katsuki had been so in love with him from the start that he couldn't help but crowd him against his nerdy sedan. His lips moved frantically against Izuku's, who let out a shuddering moan and struggled to keep up with Katsuki's enthusiasm. One hand reached up to tangle in Katsuki's hair as the other clutched the back of his shirt to bring him closer. His blood was roaring in his ears, his heart jackhammering in his chest. Katsuki's world was fuzzy as he licked into Izuku's mouth, who tentatively opened it with a shaking exhale. Having never kissed anyone before, Katsuki had absolutely no idea what he was doing. What he did know was what felt good and what was making Izuku let out tiny whimpers. So he explored like he was on a mission, and when he'd had his taste, he pulled away to send bruising kisses down Izuku's neck. Gripping him hard, Izuku tilted his head, allowing Katsuki room, and damn did that go straight to his groin. He pressed Izuku harder against the car, their hips landing together as he sucked and bit at Izuku's neck. A roll of his hips had Izuku groaning low and desperately grinding back. Katsuki had to pull away and catch his breath, trying so hard to not just hump Izuku in the middle of the parking lot, but Izuku kept grinding his hips up. Growling, Katsuki brought their lips back together, and their kissing was quickly becoming even more heated before they heard a whistle that cut through the dark. Both of them jumped away from each other, startled and looking completely ruffled. At the back of the restaurant was their horrible friends. Finally! Kirishima yelled at the top of his lungs. Get your man, Katsuki! Uraraka cheered. Good song, Zuku! Sarah clapped. Ida looked caught between cheering and scolding them. Please get it somewhere private. Shinso smirked. Nah, keep going, it's kinda hot. Katsuki flipped them the bird before giving Izuku a very chaste kiss. He pulled away and held out the money he nearly forgot about. Here, the guy owed you anyways. Izuku took the money, hesitantly biting his cheek. Kachan, do you wanna be my boyfriend? He laughed. If you want my boyfriend after kissing me within an inch of my life, I'll call the cops on you for manslaughter, 'cause you'll just kill me with heartbreak. A wild and shy smile spread across his face. He bit his lips and nodded happily. I love you too, Kachan. His heart stopped. You're coming home with me. Izuku's head snapped up. Huh? Katsuki started dragging him to his Camaro. My parents are on a business trip. We're going to my house and I'm gonna snuggle the crap out of you. He ignored their friends making their way to their cars and catcalling at them. Izuku looked over his shoulder. What about my car? Katsuki stopped. You got class tomorrow? Well, no. I don't either. We'll swing by tomorrow to pick it up. Katsuki stopped again. Unless I'm going too fast, you can totally tell me. Izuku waved his hands, biting his lip. No, I love to continue. Katsuki inhaled sharply, closing his eyes. No, you can't make love to Izuku in the parking lot. No, you can't make love to Izuku in the parking lot. He then opened the passenger door for Izuku, who gave him a smile and stepped in. The drive to his house was tense, and when they'd stopped at a red light, Katsuki finally mustered up the courage to hold Izuku's hand. As it turned green, a thought hit him. Crap, is your mom going to be worried? Izuku shook his head. No, I told her I was going to your house for the night. Okay, that's good. Wait, you told your mom about me! His voice definitely did not squeak. Sure I don't have? Izuku grew quiet with worry. Katsuki faltered. No, that's fine. Told my parents about you too. The smile that Izuku gave him was wonderful. When he got home, he hopped out quickly and rounded the car to hold open Izuku's door. The boy looked at his house in awe. Kachan, your house is so pretty! He looked it over. Yeah, it's pretty nice. They walked inside, Izuku obviously a little nervous being in such an unfamiliar place. Katsuki dropped his keys in the entryway bowl before kicking off his shoes. You can relax, it's fine. I'll grab you some of my clothes so you can have something comfortable to sleep in. Izuku grinned. Thank you, Kachan. Gingerly, Katsuki took Izuku's hand and led him to his bedroom. Izuku sat on the bed as he opened his drawers to pull out sweatshirts and a t-shirt. They're gonna look baggy as fuck on you, but you're short. He walked over to the bed a foot or two in front of Izuku as he looked the clothes over. Katsuki held them out for Izuku to grab. Izuku did, but he gently set them on the edge of the bed before reaching out to grab Katsuki's wrists, eyes holding his as he pulled Katsuki in close. The following part of the story is not appropriate for listeners under age 18, so I have skipped that. If you would like to read this story in its entirety with this part included, you can visit the original story from the link in the descriptions. After they showered and finally got into their pajama clothes, Katsuki changed out the sheets. Once they were snuggled in, fresh and warm from the shower, they started to doze off. Izuku's back was to Katsuki's chest, his large arms wrapped around his smaller figure. Katsuki happily had his nose buried into the curly hair that now smelled like his shampoo. Their legs were intertwined together, tangled under the sheets. Katsuki rubbed his fingers lazily on Izuku's hands that were caressing his arm. Izuku,
Mm-hmm.
he hummed. I love you, he whispered out.
Izuku sighed dreamily. I love you too. They fell asleep like that, wrapped up around each other and warm.
Katsuki wanted that to be his life, his future, to have Izuku in his bed and to wake up to him being by his side. Katsuki would do anything and make that happen. Everything was perfect, so much so that Katsuki never heard the front door open and close, never heard his mother calling out to him. He did, however, hear her bang open the door. Katsuki, we're home! Come help us with the... At the loud noise, both Katsuki and Izuku had jolted awake, springing to an upright position in bed. Mitsuki froze in shock, and it took Katsuki a moment to realize the horror of what had just happened, because Mitsuki was staring at Izuku, whose hikis had darkened significantly overnight and had a relaxed air to him that screamed, I just got fucked within an inch of my life. They were at a sort of stare-off before Mitsuki's shocked face morphed into a cheek-splitting smile. She screamed bloody murder before taking off, presumably to the car. Masaru! Katsuki lost his virginity! Katsuki leapt out of bed, running to hunt his mother down. Shut up! The neighbors will hear you! Behind him, he could hear Izuku cackling and his father stuttering just ahead. Despite the embarrassing wake-up call, Katsuki was so blissfully happy. End of Order Up by Sweet Fictional Dreams. If you enjoyed this recording or the content, feel free to leave a comment below or a review at the original story from the link in the descriptions. Thank you for listening.